Binaural beats are, at their most basic, putting one frequency in one ear and a slightly different frequency in the other ear. And it's the difference between those two frequencies that's important. And it's the part of you that notices your mind is wandering that we're most interested in. This is not your thoughts. This is not your reactive emotions. That's what we're used to thinking of as who we are. We are souls at our most basic, and we are in a body. It's not the opposite. We weren't a body that created a soul. We were a soul that inhabits a body. Electromagnetic field of the heart actually expands and contracts, and as it does that, it has the ability to influence other people around us in a bad mood because it's taking too long. When I imagine my heart expanding around my body with these good feelings, I can see people's mood change. And I didn't know where it came from. And then I realized eventually, it wasn't quick, this can take a little time, but I had done it to myself. It's so easy, especially in relationships or any kind of issue, to blame others for our problems. It's always something else beyond our control. Now, in psychology, there's something called locus of control, internal or external locus of control. And internal locus of control people believe that their actions, their beliefs, their thoughts, and their behaviors have an influence on their unfolding reality. But external locus of control people, they think that everything is fate or destiny, that there's nothing they can do, but the world will deliver to them whatever it will, and they're just a victim of all of this. But in relationship, it can be very useful when you're triggered somehow by something that someone else is doing to not blame the other person, but to look inside yourself and wonder, what is inside of me that's causing that trigger? Why am I responding to this particular behavior in this way? And so by focusing on the inner world, lots of things can change in the outer world. And this happened for me. I didn't realize really the extent of how this could go until I started meditating. And eventually I realized from all of the reading that I did that the best way to find out is through personal experience. And meditation was something I had learned about, that you could get quiet inside and learn how to access things like maybe your intuition or telepathic abilities. And so I wanted to learn how all of this worked. When I first tried to meditate, it was really impossible. I would simply watch my breath and close my eyes and wait for my mind to empty, and it wasn't so simple. I would try to meditate and all I would hear is grocery lists or what conversation I wanted to have with my boss next week. This was not quieting the mind at all until I found sound. And this kind of sound really helped me to quiet the brain. Now, in modern times, we have something called binaural beats, and these are sounds created with digital frequencies that create that wah, wah sound, but in very deliberate ways. And what those sounds are designed to do, binaural beats are, at their most basic, putting one frequency in one ear and a slightly different frequency in the other ear. And it's the difference between those two frequencies that's important. When you take an EEG device that measures the electric signal that comes out of the brain, it comes out in hertz or cycles per second. And 0 to 4 hertz is delta. And that's the state that's associated with sleep or coma. 4 to 7 hertz is theta, and that's associated with deep meditative states. 7 to about 12 hertz is alpha, and that's associated with being relaxed or very focused. 12 to, say, 30 hertz, that's the beta state. That's the state we're in when we're walking, talking, and that's the state we want to kind of remove ourselves from and get into that lower state of awareness associated with meditation. Between delta and theta, that's the state between asleep and awake, and others call this the hypnagogic state. When you can get the body very profoundly relaxed, but the mind is still aware, that's the state we're very interested in, because this is where we can start to make real change in ourselves and also start to notice things that are beyond the physical body. And so one of those things is the observer. We call it the inner observer. That's the part of you that's behind the thoughts. And so one of the most common meditative sort of directions is to watch your breath, and when you notice your mind wandering, return your attention to the breath. And it's the part of you that notices your mind is wandering that we're most interested in. This is not your thoughts. This is not your reactive emotions. That's what we're used to thinking of as who we are. But when we can get behind all that, and binaural beats can help us do that because they help to reduce our awareness of those ongoing thoughts and get us into an awareness that's more associated with maybe dreaming, but we're very aware. Of course, it's a very important organ in the body, no doubt. But the brain has a much smaller electromagnetic field. The heart is 60 times greater than the brains in the electric part of the field. And in the emotional part of the field, the heart is 3,000 times bigger than the brains. So you can imagine as it's expanding and contracting that it's reaching some rather far distances. And this ability to influence others is quite remarkable. They've done studies at HeartMath where someone will be sitting across the table from someone else, and the one person who's in on the experiment is doing what's known as a coherence technique. Now, a coherence technique is simply generating a feeling of gratitude, not a thought of gratitude, but a feeling of gratitude. And the person who's doing this is actually able to influence the heart rate variability and the brainwave state of the person sitting across from them, bringing them into a calmer state. And so as we're walking around in the world and interacting with others, this is going on whether we realize it or not. Our hearts are influencing the people around us, and we can pay attention, and we know who those people are who maybe make us feel uncomfortable, and those others who make us feel very good and welcome. And this is really interesting to note. But along with noting what is going on in other people's heart fields, it's most useful to pay attention to what's going on in your own heart field. Your own heart field is the only one that you have the ability to manage directly, and you do it by learning to manage your emotional state. And I've met other people, I'm not alone. I tell other people this and they will say the same thing happened to them, that when they started to focus on their inner world, that everything in their outer world started to shift on its own. And this even extended to issues with my daughter, that teenager I was having troubles with. I used to, want to fix her. I would want to talk to her teachers and straighten her friends out and change what clothes she was wearing and all of that. But when I started focusing on my inner world and didn't worry about her anymore, of course I still worried, but I didn't actively try to make changes in her life. She started to make changes in her life on her own. It was amazing. And so I think we all kind of set these templates for others to follow. Somehow, I believe it's related to that electromagnetic field of the heart. When my electromagnetic field gets smooth and I'm around my daughter, hers automatically starts to get smoother. And so again, this ultimate golden rule, by focusing on ourselves and creating that self-love, we end up helping others in ways that are so mysterious but obvious once they take place. And these synchronicities are fascinating because sometimes these things will happen and we like to call them coincidences. For example, if we're looking for an answer to a vexing problem and then suddenly you see a billboard that has a word on it that triggers, oh my gosh, that's the solution. Many of us call that a coincidence, but really a better word is synchronicity. Carl Jung used this word in his therapy work. And these are things that happen that maybe are related in ways that we can't imagine, from our place. But when we start to realize that the universe is working for us, and when we can create a resonance, for example, of positivity and love and gratitude, all of that is sort of a beacon that is radiating these kinds of feelings. And the universe has no choice but to line up with that resonance. By creating that within yourself, you open up this opportunity for the universe to deliver to you what it is that you're seeking. But you must pay attention. Today, that we're just starting to hear about, that we're made of one consciousness, that mind existed before matter. These kinds of things used to be common knowledge. And our more advanced academic types like to say that our ancient ancestors maybe weren't as smart as we are today, but I would like to offer that maybe, just maybe, they were a little smarter in some ways. And these ancient sites around the world are perfect evidence. And so I love when people take time to study and learn more about these ancient structures, because it informs us on how we should be moving forward with our collective world today. I encourage anyone who's listening to find that hope, because we've taken a wrong turn in our society and we're in the process of correcting that turn. And that turn can really be attributed to this idea of materialist science. The idea that only the physical world exists is actually a theory. But somehow that theory has come to be known as truth, especially in our secular society that has kind of taken religion out of the equation for many reasons, because there are some problems with organized religion that many people have found. But in doing that, we've kind of thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And this connection to something greater is such an antidote to all of this in our world, because the materialist science that has infiltrated our secular world has stripped all meaning and purpose. They've told us we're just chemical zombies walking around with this illusion that we're conscious. It sends me into an existential crisis. It's like, well, then why do I even bother to think? And so it's no wonder that so many people, if that's what they believe is true, are turning to this kind of despair. And so finding that connection to something greater, whatever you want to call it, the universe, the force, whatever word you want to use, if God is uncomfortable. I know God was uncomfortable for me, and I prefer the word universe, but that is a greater power. Another thing that you can imagine is that you are a piece of that greater power. Think about the philosophy that we're all part of one mind. We can come to that level of understanding that we are creator beings and that we are responsible ultimately for what's going around in this world. And so all of the despair we see is really a reflection that many of us have despair in our inner worlds. And if our inner worlds start to get more aligned with peaceful kinds of feelings, that's when the outer world will catch up. And so don't despair, because each of us has a role to play by really finding that unique spark that makes us who we are and causing that to radiate to the world around us. No soul will be left behind, and we are all in this together.